Good morning. Thanks for participating in Exim Bank's virtual 2021 annual conference. And welcome to this panel's discussion, Infrastructure Finance for a Critical Resource, Water. I'm Douglas Fry, the moderator. I've been with Exim Bank for over 20 years. I'm a senior loan officer with the Global Infrastructure Division. Joining me today are three panelists. John Borelli, president and owner of Water Surplus in Rockford, Illinois. They've been operating since 1989, employing over 40 people, and export surplus water treatment equipment around the globe. Rick Ebel, he's the Development Vice President in Environmental Chemical Corporation, ECC, a large employee-owned company in California. It competes with the world's largest engineering, construction, and environmental companies. Third, Braden Young, he is the commercial officer at the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City, Mexico. He leads export promotion efforts, some of which are focused on water treatment and environmental programs. To set the scene for our discussion today, please consider any interactions you may have with customers that are facing water scarcity. Your problem, threatening health and development of communities. Governments are being pushed to find more innovative, collaborative ways to address water stress. 2018, Cape Town almost became the first major city in the world to run out of water. Luckily, use restrictions and strong rains averted the need to shut off the tap to 4 million people. Santiago, Chile is also facing a decade-long drought, which has gone from bad to worse. Currently, about a third of its population is facing water shortages. And that's over 2.2 million people. Here in the United States, Colorado River may be declared for the first time ever by the US government as having a water shortage. This is critical since so many people are dependent on the Colorado River for drinking water, hydropower, and irrigation. And those are people in 7 states as well as in Mexico. Use restrictions is not the only way to address this problem. US companies produce technology and know-how that can provide new alternatives for sourcing water and supply activated long-term projects. Exim Bank makes this possible through trade finance programs. Water Surplus has been using Exim Bank's short-term insurance program to export its water treatment equipment. ECC has also had experience with Exim Bank. Just in January, Exim Bank authorized a preliminary commitment in support of ECC's proposed $120.8 million project in Cameroon to expand the supply of drinking water. While the equipment and services offered by these companies in the water space are diverse, as are the financing needs of their respective customers, Exim Bank provides tailor-made solutions. Within the US government, Exim Bank has a new mandate from Congress. This is to level the playing field so that US companies can be more competitive and get their high-quality technology to help people in communities with scarce water to improve water treatment, sanitation, and water quality. The Commerce Department is also involved. It tracks projects in the water space and makes matchmaking efforts possible so that US companies can get in touch with the right people in country to bid on certain projects in the water. I would now like to turn this over to John Borelli to give us an overview of his company. Over to you, John.
Thank you very much. I'd like to start by thanking you guys for inviting me to participate, and very excited to participate because I'm a big advocate of Exim Bank, and personally our company has benefited from Department of Commerce efforts and Exim Bank in the past. So I'll tell you guys a little bit about that after I introduce the company. We were founded in 1989 as a true startup, very small company. And we've grown over the years to deliver sustainable water treatment solutions across multiple industries and around the world. Even though we began exporting surplus at this particular time now, we are doing engineered products and working on larger projects all over the country and around the world. In our initial efforts, we began to create a marketplace where we were trying to repurpose idle assets out of North America, which is as you know, a very large marketplace, and reaching demand all over the world where capital could be a little bit tougher to find. And XM really helped us do that by providing short-term financing to our customers. As of now, we're considered a OEM. We do engineering, design, and manufacturing of turnkey water and wastewater solutions, heavily focused in the food and bev industry and the municipal marketplace domestically. We've grown over the years to the point where now we have an R&D budget and 2 PhDs working on innovations. Our focused innovations are in very interesting technologies. One is a nanotechnology that we refer to and branded as NanoStack. This is a membrane coating designed to change and mitigate membrane fouling by changing some of the fouling properties at the interface of the membrane and the challenge water. Additionally, we've designed an RO to leverage those properties to make the operation of the RO much more affordable from a CapEx and OpEx perspective and a little bit more sustainable. Additionally, as I mentioned in the municipal marketplace, we have a variety of custom private labeled medias that are catalytic media, and we address things like arsenic, radon, iron, manganese, and those types of groundwater contaminants, typically in the drinking water space. So the overview of water surplus, in our early phases, we were buying, selling, and refurbishing surplus and used water treatment equipment. This is a picture of some membranes that we recycle and reuse. Quite often, we'll capture these membranes at the end of life. We do have something called the membrane buyback program, where large beverage companies will sell us their used membranes, we'll recondition them, and then we'll apply them into an operation that could be short-term rental or possibly a wastewater. And all of our expertise is in the RO UF membrane space, along with ion exchange and other standard treatment technologies. We've built a very large fleet of rental equipment, and quite often we'll deploy some of these idle assets in short-term rentals to just manage risk and reduce the capital burden on our customers. So, okay, I guess that's a summary of water surplus. I would like to say that in working with the Department of Commerce, they've been extremely helpful in bridging the gap of unknowns, and also XM Bank has been extremely helpful. From my perspective as a startup and a small company, I was a little afraid of doing international business and just managing the relationship and the risk. And the XM Bank people have done a great job in helping me overcome that. And as a result, we've grown to a much larger company with a lot larger reach. I think we're positioned in the future to address international problems and bring some of our technologies to that forefront, and look forward to the rest of the conversation.
Great. Thanks, John. I appreciate you giving us that overview of your company, and it's great to see that you've gone from repurposing idle assets to developing new system solutions. And it's great that XM Bank's been with you along the way. I don't know if you have any numbers on hand, if you might be able to give a scale of how much of your sales are supported by XM Bank financing.
Yeah, we're not a big company, so the numbers can fluctuate a little bit more than maybe somebody who's more in the billion-dollar range or hundreds of millions of dollars. But we've ranged anywhere from probably 8 to 10% of our revenue coming from exports to all the way up to 25%.
Wow.
As we've grown, some of our export sales have remained steady, but that number has fluctuated. I'm looking forward to getting to know Rick a little bit more and understanding some of these large capital projects. I think we're well positioned to support a larger developer as an engineering and a supply chain partner. And I think that could really drive the numbers up over time if we were to integrate with some of these bigger developers who are managing these large projects through Exxon. So that's kind of a market opportunity for us, and that and our new technology. So I think over time we'll just continue to build exports, and part of it for us, and I think for Rick, it's going to be very different. They're a big firm, but as a small firm, when I talk to other small OEMs, they're very afraid of export and taking the time to do it. I've always been open-minded. I've loved meeting people from all over the world, and I think with that attitude and the help of the government, we've been very successful. Even to the point where we sent people to India on trade shows and other trips just to get to know the different areas. We've also used the Gold Key service, and it's all been extremely helpful. So,
Right. Yeah, I think when you've talked about expanding what you're offerings to customers, that you develop these solutions, and that your customers might need term financing, and that can be very complex as well. But if you partner with ECC or these larger corporations, then that could be part of the larger project financing, and you'll have the main EPC contractor be in charge, and they'd be able to handle all that financing of upfront for you.
I think our strong point is our technology over some of this type of project management and big business. So we have a very experienced team, heavy weighted with lots of over 500 years of expertise. I think that we're nimble. So as a partner with a larger company, providing alternative and creative solutions to their PFD and some of their design principles, along with really accurate and fast budgets, I think it would be very helpful for those guys. And also a line of sight into other vendors that may be able to do a better job than us, and just referring them to, hey, here's the best solution for this project, if it isn't include some of what Water Surplus does. So I think that's kind of our niche in this bigger capital role. But yeah, it'll be fun to participate in the future, and we're always trying to help the customer or the engineering firm as much as we can. So I think we definitely are positioned to do that in membrane and catalytic medias, which tends to fall into the drinking water development area. So
great. Well, thanks, John. Appreciate that, and that's a
Thank
great
you, Tom.
segue into ECC. And so I'd like to turn over to Rick so he can give us the overview of his company.
Thanks, John, for that excellent overview of your firm. ECC was founded in 1985. We also were a very small company. I happened to start in 1985 with the firm, and so I've been with them throughout. We started out in the 8A program in the SBA, Small Business Administration, as a minority-owned company, working primarily for the DoD, Department of Defense, and the EPA on emergency response actions. We've stayed small, pretty much so in people size. We're about 350 to 400 people, but we do over $500 million in revenue every year in contracts, and we do that through partnering with firms like John's. The way we got into XM is interesting. We started out working in Iraq back during the war, during the nation building, and we met somebody from USTDA during that process, and they introduced us to the development market space in other countries, and our business model fit very well. We were brought into Africa in, I guess it was 2012, 2013, by General Electric to work on a water treatment plant in Ghana. And that morphed into a long-term relationship with them to building water treatment plants in Africa using XM financing. As you can see by the slide, we're a pretty large company now. Most of our business is in the Department of Defense area. We're about 11 billion a year. Excuse me, we're about 11 billion overall since we started. And we've done over 2,000 projects in the pipeline or underway throughout the world over that time frame. As you can see, we're all over the world. Primarily, most of our work right now is domestic, but we do have quite a few projects overseas as well. What we do is, as you can see by our business model, we have a small group of expert design and build managers that partner with local firms, and we build projects overseas in these markets using local resources. That gives us a distinct advantage over the Chinese model, which we're basically competing with on almost every project we're looking at overseas these days, because the Chinese model uses Chinese firms. As far as the OEMs go, firms like John's, we fit very well as a designer by designing the projects in such a way that it increases the US content. So we will partner with original equipment manufacturers in the United States for export. And we take on the risk of shipping the equipment, placing it, commissioning it, and turning it over to the client. We also many times include training programs in those projects, such that it helps the client to own the asset. And again, I want to make that distinction. The Chinese model typically doesn't allow the countries to own the asset many times. A lot of times in our competition with the Chinese, we're proposing against them to build the project, commission it, and turn it over to them to operate it. And that gives us a distinct advantage to the Chinese. We have a broad range of expertise. We work primarily in the water sector in Africa right now. That seems to be a very important market for them. Our business model is such that we partner with the local governments and the national governments to finance the projects for water. Many times these countries do not have paying customers or good paying customers to develop the revenue. So we work with them to develop the financing structure with Exim Bank such that the national government can subsidize them and provide the water. Water is considered GDP positive. So the IMF and the World Bank consider them to be economically viable projects, even when there is a comparatively high debt ceiling in the country. So when we go in and work with the countries on these types of projects, we use Exim Bank to support that social element. Again, this is very important when you're competing with other ECAs or other companies from other countries, in that you do have a environmental and social benefit to these projects, particularly with climate change. Our area also expands into civil. In the civil and transportation infrastructure, we're doing quite a bit of airports, quite a few airports and roads. But that also includes healthcare. And with the COVID situation around the world, we're getting a lot of requests for hospitals. When we work with the EPC model, it's called EPCF model actually, we're actually designing the project to fit the financing. So as I mentioned earlier, we'll design the project to increase US content in the project in such a way that the Exim Bank can then come in and compete on the financing. And that's really important with the Chinese. The Chinese have extremely aggressive financing structures. They have, being a communist country, they have extremely high capabilities to mobilize quickly. And so we have to counter that through our design programs to go in and show how we can set the stage for a very competitive financing package. And we can do that in many of the areas around the world that are critical infrastructure areas. Another thing I want to point out here too is the Chinese model typically focuses on resource extraction. And so like the water sector isn't so much on building a mine or a railroad to ship ore out of the country for export. The water sector is a socially impactful area. And I think we have a very good edge on the Chinese in this. This kind of outlays the financing process that we go through. We go in and we find projects typically that are not concessionary financed. We don't compete with the World Bank. We don't try to compete with concessionary models. We go in and we find projects that are critical to the client, and we offer to go in and invest our money to design them for them such that they can be financed by Exim Bank. And that's the market niche. And again, it's public sector projects, typically municipalities or nation federal priority projects for the countries. And we find these gaps and go in and identify these projects and then set up the debt structure with Exim Bank to finance them successfully. We'll team with them in the project development phase and then close on the project. and we'll do that using OEMs from the United States to fill the need for the project. And we maximize the content again through the design process. And that's it for me. So Doug,
Great.
back to you.
Thanks, John. Thanks for that great overview. It's great to see that you're active in Africa and the water space there. I mean, Africa is a big mandate for Exim Bank. Conference has had several breakout sessions on that. It's also great that you are maximizing U.S. content so that Exim Bank can provide most competitive terms for you and to your customers. Just wanted to go over a few of our specialized programs that perhaps you are taking advantage of. We have our Engineering Multiplier Program. This is a program to help U.S. companies get their designs and technical specifications early in the design phase for the customer to review. It's thought that by getting early into the early stages of development, that the customer will be pleased with what U.S. firms are developing, and will select and award the contract for the larger project. So the preliminary design work that's done on, let's say, medium-term financing, 5 years, can then be rolled up into the larger project financing, which could be 10 or more years. So this is a way to kind of get in early on the process ahead of other competitors. Have you been working in the Engineering Multiplier Program with Exim?
Yes, Doug, we have. As a matter of fact, that project you highlighted at the beginning of the presentation is using an EMP. I'm flying to Cameroon in September to sign the financing agreements and move forward on the contract. That is using the Engineering Multiplier Program.
Great. And were you able to employ local talent as part of that design process?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have
Yeah.
quite a few AA firms working with us on the ground there. The content, I think the local content's around 28% on that one. So we're fully utilizing the availability of that model.
Well, great. Yeah, Exim Bank can finance up to 30% of the net contract price for local costs. And I think, as you noted earlier, this is very competitive vis-a-vis the Chinese model. Local governments are very happy to see that local talent is getting employed. Not third countries' employees coming to the country and taking those jobs away from the locals. U.S. firms can hire locally and train them, and it really helps develop the economy locally. So it's great that you're taking advantage of that. We also do co-financing. I don't know if we can front a larger portion of a contract if, let's say, you need to source some of your goods and services from a third country, let's say the United Kingdom. We can work with United Kingdom's export credit agency, UKEF, behind the scenes, and get reinsurance from them for those goods and services sourced from the United Kingdom, and then be able to front a larger portion of the contract so that your buyer only has one credit agreement to worry about. Have you been able to utilize our co-financing product?
We haven't yet, but we got several projects in development right now where we are, particularly with UKEF. We have one $483 million project in Africa that we're looking at co-financing with UKEF and Exim Bank.
Right. Well, and how do you feel about working with Water Surplus? I mean, like John was mentioning, it'd be great to be able to team with you. I think you've mentioned too that you do try to get a lot of U.S. content in your projects.
Absolutely.
You probably have typical partners that you work with, but you're always probably exploring new partnerships.
No, I would say we work with a lot of different companies, and I'd love to work with John's company. Exactly right. As far as our flexibility in the design process, particularly if a company comes up with an opportunity, say in a country, maybe they go to a conference, say in Europe or somewhere, and they meet a client that has an interest in their product, but they don't know how to get there. They don't know how to get it over there, install it, get the contract, and manage it. We'd be really interested to work with people like that. So we have the ability to partner. That's our business model. That's been our ethos since we're founded. So we'd love to do that. we'd love to explore opportunities with partnering with companies like John's.
I think
Oh,
it's
great.
just to interject here, water surplus is a unique business model, and because we've been exporting and building relationships, we do pull in a lot of market opportunities more than we should for our size and a disproportionate amount, and we really welcome turning those leads over to the right person, whether it be a competitive OEM who has a better solution or a large firm like Rick's. But the other area that there could be some efficiency is, we just have such high level of talent and experience that we do think out of the box a lot to be competitive. And sometimes the bigger firms that you work with, the bigger OEMs, they're just not quite as creative in the design process. So I would think that that could be unique too. If we were reviewing PFDs in the early phases, like this engineering multiplier program, where we're just adding input to see if we can get you guys a competitive advantage by some design philosophy that maybe a standard company didn't think of. We've won a lot of big projects by doing that. So I think offline, I'd love to have some more conversations with you about it. So I look
Love to
forward
do
to
it.
that.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.
That's great. Yeah, I guess this is a natural progression of networking. So that's another great service Exim Bank can provide. Just through here at the conference, getting a couple of U.S. companies together and sharing ideas and networking. That's great. You mentioned that the water space in Africa is not as competitive. You don't see a lot of Chinese competition in that space because it's not a resource that can be extracted by China. But I don't know if you can give a little bit more color about some of the concessional financing terms that you might be faced with, maybe not in the water space, but on other project types. How a little bit more color on how you are able to compete on that.
Yeah, we're definitely in competition with concessional models, particularly as the debt the debt level of a country rises. And a lot of the emerging markets that we're going into with this model, they've assumed a lot of debt, especially through Chinese borrowing. I mean, the Chinese have been very aggressive in loaning these countries money. So when we go in, we have to partner with XM. We have to partner with you guys to craft the right terms such that it meets their conditions to compete. And typically how we do that in the water space, Doug, and I think you know this for sure, is the tenor. We're in the water space, we're allowed to go up to 12, 15 years on the contract tenor on the loan, and that is competitive. But typically, the Chinese models don't go that high. Sometimes they do, but then we have to figure out workarounds. But it's absolutely a negotiating process. And you mentioned the Chinese in the water space. For the last decade, they've been pretty aggressive in the water space. I'm competing with Chinese companies in every water project I'm bidding right now. But we've heard recently that they're pulling back from that and going to the more resource extractives. I'm hopeful that that's the case. And I think if that's true, then that'll open the door for us to get more projects in the water sector.
Great. Thanks, Rick. I'd like to continue to follow your progression here and working with other U.S. firms and working on this deal in Cameroon. So now I'd like to turn it over to Braden Young, our commercial officer in Mexico City. Braden, if you can go through your presentation now, that'd be great. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Doug. Happy to be here. For those of you who may not be familiar with U.S. Commercial Service, we're the export promotion arm of the U.S. Department of Commerce. So here in Mexico, we have 3 offices in Monterrey, Guadalajara, and right here in Mexico City. And our mission is threefold: to promote U.S. exports to Mexico, to promote Mexican foreign direct investment into the United States, and finally, to promote U.S. business interests in the country. And to advance our export promotion mission, we offer a range of different services to U.S. companies that either want to start exporting their goods or services to Mexico, or that want to expand already existing exports. For example, we offer a business-to-business or a business-to-government matchmaking service called a Gold Key service, where we put together business appointments for U.S. company representatives to meet with potential Mexican partners. We also have a service called a single company promotion, where we organize a customized event, for example, a breakfast or a reception. And as you can expect, most of those events right now are virtual. But we organize these events to give US companies the opportunity to share a message or to highlight their company and their solutions to a particular Mexican audience. And the bottom line of our counseling and services really is to encourage the sale of US goods or services to Mexico by connecting US companies to potential Mexican partners. So here is a picture of a water treatment plant in Tuxtla Gutierrez in the southern Mexican state of Chiapas. And a couple of weeks ago, I led a small US government delegation to the states of Quintana Roo, Yucatan, and Chiapas in the south of the country to learn more about challenges and opportunities in the areas of climate change, renewable energy, and water and wastewater. And on water and wastewater, we learned that the challenges and opportunities are different depending where you are in the region. For example, the municipalities of Tulum and Playa del Carmen are growing really quite quickly, but this rapid growth puts unique pressure on the water and wastewater infrastructure in those places. So I believe that US technology and services providers may have an important role to play to help ensure that the water and wastewater systems keep pace with population and economic growth. And on this slide, I highlight one of our top partners in Mexico, the National Water Commission, or CONAGUA. And a couple of months ago, CONAGUA kindly shared with us an overview of their work and priority projects in the country. And the commission is working on a broad range of projects representing significant investments, including, for example, desalination plants, integrated water management projects, and water measurement systems. And US companies, of course, can potentially support these projects through equipment, technology, and services. And of course, we in the US Commercial Service would welcome the opportunity to discuss opportunities and review specific projects in greater detail. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Braden. Yeah, I think your trip to these potential opportunities was very timely for this conference. And like you said, I mean, it'd be great to get these U.S. companies in front of the potential buyers in these municipalities and states in Mexico. And you mentioned the Gold Key program and matchmaking services. Is there any way that you can provide a little bit more color in the mechanics of doing that, and how maybe Ex-Im Bank can be a part of those discussions as well?
Sure. So we work with companies in different ways. I'd like to highlight we have over 100 U.S. Commercial Service Export Assistance Centers, or USEACs, located throughout the United States. And companies often come to us through these offices, these domestic offices, or in some cases come to us directly looking for our assistance. And so I would encourage any U.S. company that is interested in learning more about the U.S. Commercial Service and learning more about our services to reach out to a local USEAC, reach out to the nearby U.S. Export Assistance Center. As I mentioned, over 100 such centers throughout the United States. So I'm sure that there's one nearby. And on the other hand, we also proactively share information about opportunities. For example, we may publish market intelligence articles about new commercial opportunities on our website at export.gov. We also do webinars with guest speakers to discuss projects or other opportunities we think would be of interest to the U.S. exporter community. And so that's another way that companies can learn about us and our services. And I would note, any interested company in learning more about the water projects and wastewater projects that we are aware of here in Mexico, can certainly feel free to reach out to me directly, and I'm happy to put you in touch with my team that's working on these issues. And of course, as you can imagine, working at a U.S. embassy, we were very familiar with working with other agencies and work closely with agencies such as EXIM and other relevant U.S. agencies to help U.S. companies succeed in the Mexican market. Thanks.
Yeah, I know that I've appreciated working with various U.S. embassies around the globe, and I've participated in some of the webinars that your colleagues have hosted. And so these webinars, reach a number of U.S. firms, the customers, and it's a great avenue for Exim Bank to discuss its trade finance programs, whether it might be limited recourse project financing, working on asset-based lending, looking at corporate risk. So this has been very advantageous for Exim Bank to develop, relationship with you and your colleagues. And I know from personal experience too that when U.S. companies are bidding on a tender, they're having to compete with technical specifications from other regions. And in one case, the tender came out and it was geared towards Asian and European specifications, but the commercial officer was able to meet with the government agency responsible for that tender and get them to amend the tender so that U.S. technical specifications were included. So it's very helpful in getting, your services are very helpful in getting U.S. companies, front and center to the right people in country.
Can
I
I comment something? I think it's one of the best. The Department of Commerce and what we're talking about is one of the best kept secrets in the U.S. and I try to promote it to people who I know have a need because it's extremely affordable. It's extremely exhaustive, the resources, and there's no way a small or even medium-sized firm could begin to have access to the local knowledge, the expertise, the efficiency. So if there's any people listening and and they think, oh, I can't do business like that, it's going to be too much money or too much of a problem, it's extremely easy, it's affordable, and yes, you do have to be committed to follow up and to go in country and build the relationships. But if you're at that state where you're that committed, you need to start with the DOC and XM. Don't try to do things on your own. You won't get in the right spot in nearly as efficient or effective of a way. So, I wish that we were a little bit bigger and that we would have leveraged that more. I think we're getting to the size today where in a 5 or 10-year plan, we now can start to we've been aware of these things and they've helped us, but now I think we can really start to put them into place for future growth. So anybody who's on the edge of saying they want to expand either existing relationships or new relationships, you ultimately have to start there. It'll be the best use of your time, and it's extremely, extremely affordable. So,
if I may jump in and say thank you, John. I certainly appreciate the kind words. I'm of course biased, but I think it's easy to work with us.
Well, right? I spend the money to buy things, so I know what a good deal is. So, I mean,
I'm glad to hear it.
It's an amazing value. So definitely, I would encourage people to investigate and make their own mind up. But for sure, it's a no-brainer.
And I'd like to jump in and just add on what John said too, Braden. We use the commercial service all over the world. And one thing I do want to underscore is the advocacy program you guys have as well. And Doug, since the topic is competitiveness in the ECA market space in the water sector, we've talked a lot about China, and of course, you guys have a mandate to compete against China in the water sector specifically. So I would like to emphasize the fact that the embassies and the commercial service in particular can be used in the local governments to explain how American companies have different rules and different regulations that we have to follow that say the Chinese don't follow. And in particular, I can remember one good commercial officer in an African country setting up a dinner at his house with the chairman of the board for the country's water company, where he really diplomatically explained the Federal Corrupt Practices Act to him. And it had quite an impact. It made a difference. And the Chinese don't follow things like that. So you guys provide an invaluable service to us as we're on the ground there, and we really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. That's what we're here to help where we can. And I appreciate you highlighting advocacy. Yeah, where there is a tender, where there's a U.S. company competing, and there's also foreign competitions, that U.S. company can apply for official U.S. government support in the form of official U.S. government advocacy. And if the request is approved, we can certainly work directly with the government buyer to encourage the buyer to go with the U.S. solution. I think at the end of the day, it can start with just a counseling call, so we can introduce ourselves and what we do, and understand a little bit more about what the company is hoping to achieve in the Mexican market, in our case, or in other markets where, of course, we have a presence as well. And if you're interested in discussing financing, happy to pull in our friends at EXIM or any other relevant agency to see how we can help. Thanks so much.
Hey, Braden, thank you so much for that presentation and for your comments. Commerce is a great partner with EXIM Bank in supporting U.S. exporters around the globe. In addition to Wire Surplus and ECC, these are just a couple of the many exporters they're supplying to the water space that EXIM Bank and Commerce can support. Their customers have a wide range of financing requirements, and EXIM Bank is a good partner and can find and tailor make those financing solutions for them. And I'd just like to invite the other panelists if they have any concluding remarks. But I think this has been a very useful discussion. It's helped to just for networking for Wire Surplus and ECC, and so it's open to my other panelists if they have comments.
Well, I'll just wrap up by saying thank you for including us. We're excited to continue to work with the Department of Commerce and EXIM, and excited to try to bring solutions to the globe for in areas where other people may not have certain technologies, or there's certain hidden solutions that they just aren't aware of. And it's been a pleasure. I appreciate the time.
Great. Thanks, John. Well, that concludes the panel discussion. And look forward to responding to any comments that might be in the chat line. And look forward to working with you as you get projects need our support. Thanks. Take care.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks,
Thank you.
Braden. Thanks, John.